My name is Dr. Susan Feneck, and I am the CEO and founder of Juvenile Justice Impact. And today we have with us Lena and Ken Walther, who are the founders of Awareness is Prevention. And we're going to be talking about a major event that we are going to be having coming up on January 28th about education in grooming. That's going to be in Mayor Carolyn Goodman's chambers. And it's going to be focusing on how not to become a victim of sex trafficking, and January is Sex Trafficking Prevention Month. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for inviting Juvenile Justice Impact to be a partner with you, to be part of such an incredible cause. So tell us, thank you both for being here. Tell us about yourselves, and how did you, AAP has been around for 8 years. Mm-hmm. And tell us how 8 years ago you came up with this idea. Like, what drove you to develop this company?
I think the thing that coming up with a name, Lena should tell that story, how she was given a talk on human trafficking at UNLV.
Yeah, and one of the students raised her hand and said, well, how can we prevent this? How can we prevent getting caught up in it? And I said, awareness. Yeah. That's the prevention. And that's where the name came from. Because it is. If you are aware of what's going on, you have a chance not to fall for the tricks. And I got involved. I'm the Swedish consul here. So I got a phone call back in 2006, before anyone ever talked about trafficking. Mm-hmm. And it was the Swedish young woman who called me, and she needed help. She had a 4-month-old baby. She came as a tourist a year and a half earlier and met this guy and thought they were going to have a romantic relationship. Well, it turned out he was a trafficker, and he had her on, in those days, he had her on the streets and, abusing her, hitting her, giving her drugs, you name it. And she finally had a chance to call and found me. So, she wanted me to come and pick her up at the apartment. I said, absolutely not. You're going to die. I said, you take that little baby when you have a chance, and you run out of that apartment, and you get to your phone, you call 911. Police will come and pick you up, and they will take you to a shelter. And that's exactly what happened a few weeks later. And I got her out of the country with passports, since I can do emergency passports, and she was out within a week. And the guy had no clue what had happened. Wow.
And the good part is the baby, the birth certificate had no father's name on it, which was a good thing, because otherwise they're encumbered for 18 years. Yeah. If you have the dad listed.
Well, I couldn't have done the passport.
Couldn't have done the passport either.
I probably would have gotten an extra permission from the embassy to do it anyway, but regardless, it's a thing that people don't realize. And I'm trying to educate hospitals, but they don't really want to hear it. They don't understand the ramification to have someone on a birth certificate that's probably, if it's a trafficker, is probably not even the father. And they don't understand that the person, the mother and the baby, is stuck with this person for 18 years. You can't take any medical decisions, you cannot take any major school decisions, you cannot get the passport. There's so many things you can't do.
And the hospitals are resistant?
Yeah, for them, what do you mean we shouldn't put the guy's name on there? I mean, if she seems to be getting along with it, the mother, I said, just leave it empty for the time being, because a DNA test, I do DNA tests at my office sometimes with paternity cases, and it's so easy to do. You just add it later.
Right. So
that was so far away from the question.
That's okay. We're here just to talk, and I know that the grooming. So the documentary that they're going to be displaying on Friday, January 25th in Mayor Carolyn Goodman's chambers is going to be how not to become a victim of sex trafficking. And I know, for example, Dante King with the Attorney General's office, and we have Adrian Hunt from the Las Vegas Metro Police Department, who are very close to Juvenile Justice Impact. They've been to every workshop. We were always supporting each other. And what he was just saying is that, there could be, a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old girl, and then all of a sudden gets a ding. Hey, you look pretty.
You look wonderful.
You look wonderful. Let's meet at the park. Let's meet at the mall.
Yeah.
And then they wind up being a victim.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times they have no idea who they're talking to. they assume maybe someone their own age sometimes, and most of the time it's definitely not. It's a perpetrator, pedophile, could be 40 and over, whatever. And then they entice them, they always want a photo. Oh, can you send a photo? And then, well, maybe you can unbutton your blouse, or maybe you can take off your sweater. It's steps. And then they isolate them from their friends. And then they alienate them from the family. And it's all these steps. And the documentary shows it so well. You can't miss it. First you see, and then they act it out with the actors, which not actually real actors, but they are the ones who are doing it. And it's easy to follow, and you get it. Mm-hmm. And it's very important for parents and kids to see this, because if they understand what's going on,
the level of gravity. Yeah. And we have a mutual friend, Susan Roski, and she was actually on a show of mine a few years back called the School to Prison Pipeline. But outside of the School to Prison Pipeline discussion, we spoke about how victims, these youth, sex-trafficked kids, often do more time than kids charged with violent crimes.
Yep.
And you watched it.
Oh, yeah. And I've spoken to Susan many times. She was one of the first prosecutors with all these cases, before they even had the legalization of prison, putting the traffickers in prison. That came much later. She worked with the judges and all that long before that happened. And they had no chance, because the girls were looked upon as prostitutes.
Well, when they were arrested, they were stamped as prostitution.
Yeah. And the states would have the rest of their lives.
And that, yeah, and that title, so to speak, that's with them forever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We've had other guests on that talk about, charges that they've had in the past that just completely stick with them for the rest of their lives and alters their entire life for the rest of their life.
Yeah. They can't get jobs, they can't have background checks, nothing. It's terrible. But then with the AB 160, I believe it's 162.
AB 62, I believe.
And that, when that was pushed through, that allowed them to put the trafficker in jail and not punish the girl. No stamping of the prostitute stamp on the girls.
In that regard, too, the Nordic model or the Swedish model of punishing the purchaser, not the victim, is something else that's caught on in Europe and trying to get caught on in the States.
It's caught on in some states here, but not Nevada.
Nevada's not quite ready for that.
Susan Roski said that Las Vegas is the Mecca for sex trafficking.
It is.
So you would think that with what the other states are doing, they would want to implement that here.
No, you have a very strong lobby group here. Sex working lobby group, and you have legal prostitution in Nevada, no other state, in certain counties, and that makes it more difficult to legalize something or to punish buyers.
And so we're thinking that we're going to be inviting well over 300 people to our event here on January 28th, the Education and Grooming. And I think that this is the way that we raise a level of awareness. Like, for example, the gala that we just had on November 6th. The primary goal of the gala, outside of what we do all during the year, is to bring community leaders together to network, to tangibly make a difference in our community. And from that, which was just 2 months ago, I mean, we have networked and we're now putting in tangible, real steps to making a difference. We're not sitting around talking about ideas. No. Like, just on the phone yesterday with Dante King, Adrian Hall. This is what we are going to do. And then we were talking to Amy, we're all at Cupcake Girls, and Dante's like, oh my God, I never knew of her before. And I'm like, well, she just so happens to, be the executive director of the Cupcake Girls, and they work a lot with sex traffickers. He's like, please, can I have her number? Boom, boom, boom. Now he's connected with her. Now we can invite the Cupcake Girls to this event. We can invite Dante King from the Attorney General's office. We invite Adrian Hall from the Las Vegas Metro Police. And so much has come out of the gala, and it's only been 2 months, and we're getting together. We're coming up with ideas. We're coming up with how to come up with like prevention programs, and we're doing it.
Yeah,
we're doing it.
And to also realize you've got to work together with people.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why we started our own foundation, because no one was working together. And no one was working with awareness. Everybody was working with victims, and that's wonderful. But someone has to warn these little girls or boys before they end up being a victim.
That's why this grooming thing, people think, oh, trafficking, someone's in a little white van and they grab some girl and throw her in the back and take her away. That happens very, very seldom. Now it's mostly they're groomed on social media. And there's certain sites, like one in particular we've been working against for over a year. Well, not quite a year, but maybe a year. Called OnlyFans.
OnlyFans.
And if a parent see that name, that the daughter or son is on this OnlyFans, it doesn't really ring.
It's a very horrific site.
Sounds almost like a musical fan club or whatever. OnlyFans, you don't.
It sounds very trendy.
Yeah.
It's a $1 billion industry recruiting kids.
It's virtually a porn site.
It's a porn site, but it's a subscription site. You have to subscribe to join OnlyFans, and as a content uploader, you have to have a subscription. Then to view what someone has uploaded, you pay a price, and that price that they view the person who uploaded something, it can be very hardcore, and they pay money to that person that I think they keep 60% and they pay 40%. But at any rate, it makes it difficult for anyone to monitor because of what we call a paywall. Enforcement can't go in and just look at it without paying between $16 and $49 or something like that. So it's hard to see the depth of the depravity that they're doing on there. But that's how they catch kids. Especially last year, most kids were doing their studies online, and they were in front of a computer all day. And here comes something that you want to make some money, kid. You just sign up here, $16, and you're going to make $1,000 a week.
And someone would be thinking, I want to do that because think about how many parents lost their job, how many businesses shut down, So how do is there a way that, we find out who is the top person of this organization?
Oh, yeah.
And how do we
It started in England 2016 and by a British guy and his brother, and now it's owned by a Russian guy. He's also in England, but he's also lives in Chicago at times. It's too much money, you can't get it.
It's hosted by Amazon Web Services. So one of the things we've been doing, we've been working with the lobbyist group in D.C. and the University of New Haven to try and do something against OnlyFans.
Well, and also the merchant accounts.
The merchant
the Visa
accounts.
and MasterCard, because they are not allowed to pay money to minors. We only care about minors. We don't care about 18 and over. They can do whatever they want. But there is so many minors on this platform right now. And MasterCard has actually listened up to some extent. Visa just ignores it.
Well, they said they were going to review it and then
we had a congressional people. We had a letter written by Ann Wagner, who's a congresswoman, and she managed to get 102 signatures from other congressional leaders to send to the Department of Justice to approach Visa and MasterCard to make them stop paying to minors. Unfortunately, none of the Nevada congressional leaders signed the letter.
So when you're going against, now they've had a group, was it Exodus, that went against Pornhub?
Right, yeah.
They went against Pornhub, which is the biggest commercial porn site in the world. And they did get Visa and MasterCard to stop. Now that was quite an accomplishment. And we work with Exodus. Lena knows personally, she's given talks in D.C. at these big conferences and so on. But to do this, when it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, a little petition. We have a petition on our website to gather signatures, but they don't normally do much. You have to go through the legislator.
Well, they're getting paid, and they're making all their money through Visa and MasterCard. But to get to Visa and MasterCard...
Well, they got to provide merchant services providers or OnlyFans to their content providers. Content providers are the ones that upload pictures and videos. Subscribers are the ones that view it. And the traffickers that entice the kids to put in and guide them what to do.
And that's a secondary effect. The traffickers and other people can find out their IP address, and they can find out through other social media where they live, and they can make personal contact with a content uploader. And that's why recruiting now is done primarily through social media access and sites such as OnlyFans. And they're pretty vindictive people when you're talking about, just like a pimp in the old days. If you try to mess with their property, you're going to suffer some consequences. Same thing with this. It's dangerous to go against them, but it's something that has to be done to protect the young kids.
But is there a way that, like, say I were to log on? Hi, I'm Susan, or make up some name. I'm Kathy, and I'm 14 years old, and I'm just kind of sitting at home. I mean, is there a way to put people in that are not youth, maybe, and then the people that come after them, then they would be...
To do a stint operation?
Yeah.
A sting?
I think they've done many of those.
But then they're still up and running and...
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, they even help the kids, give them ideas on how they can steal an ID. Well, get your grandma's passport or do this and that.
And all they need to do is hold up the ID next to their face and look into the camera. That's the age verification.
Now, Google and other people have more advanced facial recognition for positive identification over the internet, but they're not using it. Now, if we could get that done, that would eliminate most of the problem. Of course, they could have a bait and switch. They could have someone like Kathy sign on, and then all of a sudden Kathy's getting paid for stuff that Julie's doing. So I mean, it's just what you have to do is punish the people that are making these kids and recruiting these kids, grooming these kids online. So the more people that are aware of this, I think the better off we'll be.
Well, I think that for sure, 100%, this is something that we bring up on January 28th. And like you said, the awareness. I mean, because they're not going to be getting paid if it's not for Visa and MasterCard, right?
Nope.
So
well, they do other, they have other, that's the main ones. But
they're the main ones. But imagine if we get a hold of the top people at Visa and MasterCard. And they'd be like, okay, so you're supporting this, right? You're supporting this.
Well, when MasterCard came back with it, said, okay, find some victims, minor victims that wants to come forward, and so we can see that really what you're saying is true.
Well, can't they just go to the website?
Oh, they won't do that. You literally have to serve everything and say, look at these people.
Well, the thing is, too, again, since it's a paywall, the investigators have to sign up as a subscriber. And then they have to go through and search a million files till they find something that looks violent or an abusive type uploaded content. So it's not easy. We're working on ways that maybe the investigators could have access to the other side of the paywall.
The center that actually is very effective is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in Washington, D.C., NCLEC. And they have a whole division with over 100 people sitting and just scanning their online sites and stuff. And it's a full-time thing for them.
Sure.
And they find a lot. And
Each
they help
police
the
force
police.
has a group that are doing that too.
Yeah.
And
But
the
they work with
PTSD
those
rate
people.
is quite high.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, with sex trafficking, there's no discrimination. It's not like it's a tall person, it's a black person, it's a white person, it's a Hispanic person, it's a Mexican person. It could be
Anybody.
right. There's not like a certain profile that you would say, like, sometimes you could profile certain people to fit in certain categories without going into in-depth descriptions. But when it comes to sex trafficking, it could be anyone looking like the three of us.
Oh,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they also target, I have a lot of parents that tell me when I'm out speaking, I understand there's a problem, but it will never happen to my daughter. And I'm trying to tell parents it can happen to anybody. They actually like to go after the little wealthier kids because normally they look better. They have the money to spend on perfect teeth and perfect hair and perfect everything. Mm-hmm. So anybody can pull it.
One of the things that Lena did when we used to teach at or give classes at Clark County School District, and then they said that, and we did it with the chaplains. The chaplains would give the talks along with AIP, and then the school district. I maybe shouldn't say this on the podcast, but none of us were allowed to speak directly to the kids. We could only train the social workers and the counselors. And the chaplains couldn't even go under the little cross on their shirt because that was religious and you can't have that in the CCSD. So that meant that was another reason that they wanted to have the social workers and the counselors at the school do it. And they would normally show a film that we provided and they would walk out of the room. So the kids, how much do you do teaching that way? So Lena went a step beyond and she told mothers and fathers, but mostly mothers, get a gathering of kids at your house and I'll come and give a talk. And when she finished the talk, she put out a questionnaire and asked them, would you rather have this type of information given to you with your parents or without? And most of the kids said with. Yeah. So that was a surprise.
We thought it would because we could talk freely. We didn't have to be politically correct. And say whatever we wanted. And they could ask the questions they wanted to ask. It was very interesting.
But you can't be everywhere at once, that's the thing. So that's why the next level will be social media on our part to get the word out.
And so I've recently, as another result of the Gallup, been invited to speak at different schools in different events coming up. And this is definitely 100% going to be in the top 5 bullet points of what I'm discussing because people always think, oh, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to my kids. It's not going to happen to my niece, my best friend, or my daughter's best friend, because they're not aware of how relevant it is.
They're not. And when I started speaking, it was actually 8 years ago. I go anywhere. I get all these organizations call me at churches and so on. And I said, sure, I'll be there. And for a while, I took a little 15-minute segment of what my life with me. It was this young girl. It was very well done, close-up of her. She was trafficked in a truck stop. She ran away from home for fun for a day, 15-year-old with a friend. And the friend called this guy that she knew, and of course, he was a trafficker. And it is heartbreaking. I cry every time I see it. It's heartbreaking. But it hits home with people. And in the beginning, 8 years ago, when I started going out and speak, it was the same comment everywhere I went. Oh, I have no idea. Everybody. At least now, I get, oh yeah, I hear there is a problem. And then comes the next thing. But it won't happen to my daughter. So they still can't connect
the reality.
Yeah, that this can happen to absolutely anybody.
But I think that, the way that we move forward is we're all partnering together.
Exactly.
We all know, we have all these different organizations that are coming together. We have AIP, we have Juvenile Justice Impact, we have the Cupcake Girls, we have the Las Vegas Metro Police Department, we have the Attorney General's Office, we have all of these incredible community leaders that are all coming together to make a difference. And I think that, plus we're going to be in Mayor Goodman's, we're going to be at City Hall on January 28th, and that is a great event for a direly needed, to bring the level of awareness up. Because when you bring that level of community leaders together with that depth of passion that we all have and completely share 100% between all of us, then that's where change happens.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
What's good about this particular documentary was done. The producer's 17-year-old kid whose church raised money for his videography equipment. and he was asked to go to Houston, Texas, to film a documentary that she had an idea of, and they completed it with no budget, no script, in 3 weeks, and it won awards. And so we're bringing them out here just to show what can be done in the right spirit. There's no paid actresses or actors. Mm-hmm. It's all done, and it hits home. Mm-hmm. So they'll be here in person in Las Vegas on the 28th.
And we're all going to be looking forward to meeting them. And what they're going to be discussing is the 8 steps of grooming.
Mm-hmm.
8 steps.
Yeah, and they show them so clearly. So even if you never heard the word grooming or what it is, you will after these 17 minutes. You don't know exactly.
And it changes your life.
Yeah.
I know a judge right now that, he stands so much for sex trafficking. And we went to a forum just for the last month, I think. And Dr. Christina Miller was there from St. Jude, and Judge Boyd was there, and he spoke openly. He's like, so many times people ask me, did I have a family member or someone who was sex trafficked? And he's like, no, it was just that one case that had such an impression on me. And I've had several cases, unfortunately, that gave so many impressions that changed my life forever, that has led me to do what I'm doing today. And here we are at the podcast, right? And the whole purpose of this podcast is to raise a level of awareness, to have people come on, to have people talk, to people have a voice, so people don't think that they're alone in a situation where they might otherwise think they are.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And what really makes me happy, because I always talk about it. If I can be at a cocktail party, sooner or later I'm going talking about the dangers.
You can't help it because there's so many people that don't know about it, and next thing you know, it's like, when I talk about the corruption of the juvenile justice system and the family court and this and that, they're like, what? Yeah. But if their speciality is something completely different, then they would not realize otherwise how that really impacts all of our lives without it even without. We don't need to know someone who was sex trafficked to have it be a part of have an impact on our lives. Like with the juvenile justice system, guess what, people? It comes out of your paycheck every week until you get taxes.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, but what really makes me happy, occasionally, but fairly often, people come up to me and say, I remember what you talked to me about at that party. I've really been thinking about this. I'm reading up on it more. I'm beginning to see how common this is. Yeah. And it makes me very happy, because talking about it, at least they listen and they remember, and it does stick with most people.
So we're planting seeds. And I think that's the great thing about what we're doing. With, social media has its pros and cons, right? Because we're talking about the cons with the OnlyFans, right? But the pros, in our cases, is talking about companies like OnlyFans, talking about, the events that we're having coming up, talking about why we're doing it, when we're doing it, who's going to be there, and while we are there, hey, Dante, hey, Adrian, hey, this one, hey, that one, Amy, this one, that one, okay, what can we do, with everyone's resources? Because they might have a door that could be opened only by them, but you know what? You're going to be the best 2 people to be walking through it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the whole point, is to bring people together. I feel really good about this. I'm thank you so much. I'm proud to be a part of it, and
I think we're going to make it.
This is going to be a great venture. And our little hashtag we're going to come up with, or we have come up with, is until everyone is aware.
I love it. Until everyone is aware. I always say, be the change.
There you go. I love that too.
Well, we can come up with a whole list of them, and we can share them amongst ourselves. And I just, and what a lot of people don't know is what an incredible community we live in.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
And it's just, it really is incredible how everyone comes together. Like, you're like, oh, hey, do you know Chaplain Down? I'm like, of course I know Chaplain Down. She was like the person who, was the chaplain, the chaplains who always come to the gala, to show that respect. That was just something I had come up with Maria Novella, the CEO of Nevada School of Professional Studies, and I was like, God, do you know anyone do you know a group of people or anyone that they would be willing? Because initially I was like, hey, maybe some students can carry the candles. And so at the candles at the gala, every year, that's my personal way of showing respect to all the youth that I knew personally, that that took their lives or died in the juvenile justice system.
Yeah.
And it really is such an honor to have them a part of it. But yeah, so he's like, hey, you know Jill? I'm like, oh, of course I know her. And you're like, do you know this
I think we're going to find a lot of other mutual contacts.
Yeah. Because we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We have the same goal.
The same passion, the same mission, the same goals, the same heart that we're putting into everything, and it really is.
And you can actually see when you start working with something you're passionate about, you can make a difference.
You can.
One person can make a difference.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're not just one person.
Yeah,
we're all of us, and we all know each other.
Yeah.
I'm like, because
sure.
it's so funny. Like when we were previous to the podcast, we're like, hey, I'm like, well, you know, I know this person. I'm like, well, of course, you know, we all know each other. And then there's a lot of people that are on each other's team, so to speak, like the Cupcake Girls. You know, I was like, down, she's like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't know about that. And I'm like, all right, well, click, screenshot, share. And Amy was like, oh my God, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for giving me, you know, so we're not going to know everybody.
No.
But you know what? But hey, just like yesterday, I shared the contact with him, you're sharing the contact, we know Chaplain Dow, no problem. Yeah, it's all meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest, and I'm looking forward to being a part of your event on the 28th on every level. Can you, before we wrap up, can you please tell everyone where to find you, and if they would like to get a hold of you, what is your contact information and that?
Yeah, website is a good place, aipnv.org. They can also go to the Facebook page, and they can go to the email, ken@aipnv.org, Lena@aipnv.org.
Lena, that's Lena, because not everyone says Lena, they say Lena. So it's Lena.
That was the name of my grandmother.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
That's aipnv.org. So yeah, that's
and AIP stands for Awareness is Prevention.
And then we can be reached at if you want to call us, we can be reached at 888-JJI-0010. You can check out our website at www.impactjji.com. Or if you would like to leave us a message, it's at juvenilejusticeimpact@gmail.com. And thank you so much for being here. We are going to have you back again as a guest when we get closer to the date of our event coming up on the 28th, and maybe like 2 weeks beforehand, maybe. Mm-hmm. And by then we'll have our flyers done, and who's doing what, and who's gonna be there, and we can maybe have along some of the other people who are going to be involved in the January. We can bring along people that are going to be involved in the January 28th event. Yeah. And then we can have them come together, all of us, and we could sit around and have like kind of a roundtable discussion and talk about it to promote it. And we're going to fill those 350 seats.
Yeah, that will be wonderful.
Will be
and teenagers and preteens are welcome.
Of course, sure. So some of the schools that we're all involved in, we can talk to. Maybe what we could do is talk to the principals, right? We can talk to the principals, the administrators. And see how many teams we can get involved. We can have like maybe, some tables set aside specifically for the teams, and moreover, definitely we definitely 100% want to invite the parents.
Yep.
So we can have like maybe a nice little section with the parents and their kids, and
we can do follow-up events too.
Yeah, of course.
For kids, that would be really good.
Yep.
In January is the month of
human trafficking.
National Human Trafficking
Prevention. Yes. So January next month is going to be big in everything that we're doing, and I would love to also introduce you to the Cupcake Girls as well. Amy is just a delight, and she's just such a sweetheart. And she was actually one of our. She'd actually done a podcast as well, and she talked all about what she's done, how she's making a difference, some challenges that she's faced, how she's overcome them. And, moving forward, some of the goals that they have, just like all of us, and how we're all going to come together and make a difference.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
They're good times, and here we are.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And we will schedule you probably just in a few weeks, actually, coming up. And we'll come together and make a plan, and we'll be coming back again.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.